Good morning. It's Eikos Partners, Brian and myself, David, and we thought we'd take this opportunity to discuss a bit about our views on open source. As the audience is fairly well aware, open source has been a fairly fundamental part of quite a few software development efforts. Whether an organization believes it or not, open source is kind of underpinning a lot of the systems that they've actually built. The issue that we're seeing is most open source initiatives kind of miss the point and sort of are done at a much too low a level. And as we start solving problems on risk, both operational, market, credit, on business process re-engineering, workflows, then this is completely missed by the open source community. That there isn't a manifestation of what those processes are within a neatly packaged service or code base that allows a startup business in particular to kind of go from zero to building out their infrastructure very, very quickly. What are your thoughts, Brian?
Well, I think it's sort of same line. The majority of the expenditures associated with technology and IT inside financial institutions that we service is associated with delivering business function. Now, one could argue that a lot of the cases, the business function between firm A and firm B is well north of 80% common. And I think a lot of people in the business would agree with that. So you would sort of see the argument then that why not concentrate on the 80% commonality and begin to build things from an open source perspective. Whether do that cooperatively or on their own and then push it out, that's open, but it seems as though people still believe that there is a proprietary value in delivering everything from the ground up yourselves, and that would seem to be a very expensive way of going about things. And we would expect that over time the economic impact of continuing along this line will cause people to realize that there is no other alternative but to go open source. I mean, if you look at over the last 20 years, people have really been focusing on their legacy infrastructure, the systems infrastructure. To a large extent, all they've managed to achieve in the last 20 years is not to reduce the legacy, but to actually increase it. And you've got this sort of industrial inertia associated with a lot of the function, that because it's been done this way historically, then we just continue to do it this way. And back to David's point, this gives an opportunity to people who haven't got an infrastructure or starting up a new business, because they can basically put in place something that's much more effective and efficient, and for them, an approach that employs open source is probably very attractive. The larger firms tend to look for complete solutions. If they're looking for a replacement, they're really looking at complete solutions off the shelf or close to off the shelf. And I don't think the world is exactly like that. So in the end, they'll buy something that's apparently relatively cheap and spend 3 to 5 times that amount of money making it meet their needs. So if you could go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, there's a set of discrete functions that we actually have to perform to do our business. And if we could build some open source components that be able to support that in such a way that they can actually be plugged together, and they don't have to be built around necessarily a hard and fast common architecture, but certainly one that allows the transfer of information between one component and another and events to go across the border, which I think people can do fairly straightforwardly now. Then there's an opportunity. to be able to change the dynamic.
And by changing the dynamic, you improve your business, you improve your bottom line. This is what this is ultimately all about, is how do I squeeze the last bit of profit out of the efforts. And most, if not all, IT efforts are a cost to an organization. So there has to be the flip side, which is on the business, the justifying the cost of building those systems. And multi-million, tens of millions of dollars poured into a system that only does a fraction of the functionality the business needs is certainly not value for money. So taking an open source approach, thinking more at the higher level abstractions with regards to the business functionality, offers an organization the opportunity to drastically reduce costs. And by doing so, up their profit margin.